Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Conversation with Masters. Tonight, we have a new amazing guest. She's Tania, but like always, I will leave the place for her to present like she want and she like. So, Tania, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, nice to be here, Marius.
I'm happy to
Yeah,
connect with you.
yeah, definitely. Excited for the conversation and for those listening, I'm happy to give my full name. It's Tania Gonzalez Ortega. Yeah, my business I call it New Earth Consciousness is the name of my business and my website. So yeah.
So, if you describe yourself to the listeners without all the titles and roles,
Yeah.
how is Tania? Who is Tania?
Yeah. I love that you asked without all the titles. Really who am I?
I must reflect on,
Yeah, I will say that I guess I'll just share who I've been on my life journey thus far, right? Because all of us are always changing and transforming, right? Like that's part of being human is to grow and expand just as consciousness is. Most of my life, especially since my young adulthood onward, I've always have felt that there is more to this life than what we're told, and that there's just something more to us. And so I got really into meditation. Originally, it was just something I did on my own. I didn't have a teacher or anything like that. I just read books about it. I had my art practice, was studying fine art at UCLA at the time. And I just had this sort of natural unfoldment of asking the question, who am I really? What is the mind? What is the nature of the mind? And I found that the mind in itself was like a closed loop. I don't know how else to describe it. There was something beyond the mind. And when I started experimenting with meditation, I started to have glimpses of this space where thoughts didn't exist, and I got a glimpse of peace, right? That space of no thought and the deep tranquility and having a glimpse of actually what is reality. And when people say, and we hear this all the time, right, from people who've had like near-death experiences and stuff, where they're like, I just experienced that everything is love, everything is peace, everything. And it's really true. I think that a lot of the problems in our world is just because of what our thoughts, what our mind is projecting out into the quantum fabric of things. And so yeah, I've just been always a seeker. And in my seeking, I've had many different experiences, many of which some people would say are somewhat, well, definitely beyond the mundane, beyond our everyday waking reality. I started to discover the world of energy and vibration and really unlimited possibilities, when we tap into who we really are and the power of intention and also the power of our minds, that if we can focus the mind, then we can really have an impact on our health, on our relationships in the world around us. And so it's definitely been a very wild ride in many respects, but nowadays I really love being of service to other people who are seeking healing for themselves. Perhaps I seem to uh, attract people who just find that they're stuck in some aspect of their life and they just can't seem to get out of it. And so that's where my work comes in. So,
So reflective.
yeah.
So I'd like to ask you, when you say you help spiritual intelligent women, what
Mhm.
does really mean?
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like my work is for for women who are already have certain level of awareness if someone comes to me who, let's say, I don't know, doesn't believe in the unseen realms, doesn't believe in energy, doesn't believe in the quantum field and the power of, just the power of intention, all of the unseen, if they're very much like, I can, what I see is what's real for me and that's it, then my work is not going to make sense to you, and it's probably going to be really overwhelming and too much, right? So that's what I mean by that is not that you necessarily have to be someone who's had extraordinary experiences necessarily, but you're just somebody who feels that they have a connection with spirituality, with the unseen, with the divine.
Already, maybe,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
work maybe with themselves in some way, so
Yeah, they
they
have.
understand your work and
Yeah.
appreciate it. Wow. So, do you think it's there are many women who struggle with money in this period of time?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I have a lot to say about that because I've been really in the last year or so, I've been diving into the topic of money, and I've been learning a lot of different things. And so it's been quite an eye opener for me. I think that, a lot of people have seen The Secret or have read these books about how to get what you want, manifest more money, etc. But what's missing really is education around how money works. And it turns out that really only 1% of the population actually gets the best financial education possible. And of course, that's no accident. When you think of the 1%, well, it's not a random 1%. It's the elite, right? There is a structure in our society that the elite have a vested interest in keeping the 99% dumbed down, right? Because that's just how it's been set up for many, many, many centuries. And so, yeah, the 99% are kind of given a false bag of goods. We've been told, go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a degree, and you'll be fine. You'll have a good life, right? And it's not the case. You never get ahead, right? I mean, I'm sure many of your listeners are like, yeah, like I even went and got my master's and I'm still, maybe living paycheck or to paycheck or whatever. And it's because we haven't been given a philosophy or the pathways to understanding how do you create wealth, how do you get outside of being stuck in single-handed income. I feel like Robert Kiyosaki talks about a little bit, in his book Rich Dad Poor Dad, the 4 different quadrants of, there's employed, self-employed, business owner, and then investor. And so really you have to, if you're interested in building wealth, then you have to move through those 4 quadrants. You have to get out of being employed, moving to self-employed, and then moving over to business owner, eventually into investor. That's just how the money system is set up, like it or not. That's what we have right now. Now, that being said, I think the system is actually changing very quickly right now, right? Wouldn't you
Yep.
say? I mean, there's crypto now, and there's all these what I call, well, not what I call, but what is called, decentralization. There's different projects out there that are outside of the current matrix of the centralized system. The United States, the money system centralized within the Federal Reserve and the banks and so forth, and that power being only in the hands of the few. And so I think we're going to start seeing more of a decentralized system where some of that power is going to start to come back to the people. Hopefully. I don't know. It's the Wild West right now.
We hope.
We hope, yeah, yeah. And so basically, yeah, that we need to understand how money actually works and how to make it work for us. And I think most people chase money, and that's what I have done for many years. I didn't even look at money. I didn't even pay attention to it. I could care less about it. I was just following my ideals, wanting to be of service until, as time went on, it's like we're seeing so much inflation and, there's this feeling of impossibility I feel like that a lot of people are facing, where it's just like, wow, how do I get ahead? Just as soon as I start making more money, taxes are raised, the price of eggs and milk goes up, all of that kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
it's a challenge. It's not easy.
It's a challenge for many people, of course. And from this perspective of spirituality, I want to ask you, what blocks abundance the most? Fear, guilty, loyalty, or it's something else? Because maybe first
Yeah.
we must to look in the mirror, you know, to ourselves to understand better what's happening.
Yeah. I think a lot of people's blocks around, receiving wealth or having money it's passed down to us. The beliefs and programs around money are definitely passed down to us. And so if you're struggling and you're like, gosh, why am I always broke? Or why am I always spending too much money? Or why, I don't understand. I keep applying myself. It's because there's these subconscious programs, and it could be coming from, maybe your great-grandfather was a crook, and you're afraid that if you make money, then somehow you're a crook. I mean, I'm just making something up. And so in my work with what I use is family constellations, which is a process of really getting outside of your own story, because we make up stories. We think, oh, I don't have money because I'm terrible at this or that, when actually maybe it's not that. Maybe you're just actually carrying energetic dynamics that actually don't even belong to you. And so, for example, like I could even speak to my own story. I grew up in a home where my father was constantly saying that money was evil. It was the root of all evil. And for my mother, there was never enough. It was never enough money. She was always worried about money, making money, having money. There was always this
The
kind of panic.
survival mode, you
Survival.
know.
Yeah. And so I grew up, I felt like, okay, well, what side do I pick? And I think for many, many years, and I think it's typical, especially amongst people who are spiritual, do have that tendency to believe that money is the root of all evil. And so I carried that for a long time. So really, yeah, it's about really seeing for yourself and reclaiming your potential. And what is money really? I mean, money can do a tremendous amount of good in the right hands, right?
So, where does the conflict between spirituality and money usually begin?
Where does it begin? Well, it probably comes through religion, perhaps. There's this belief, I think, with spirituality or with healers that, oh, well, it should be free. If you really are a spiritual person, then money shouldn't matter to you. Everyone should have the right to be healed. If you're able to do it, you should heal it. Otherwise, if you don't give it freely, that means you're a bad person. It means you're selfish. It means you're greedy. And it doesn't work, because it's like, well, the healer has got to eat and pays bills too. Like, I would love to be this magical being that doesn't need anything and I could just, do everything for free. I think all of us secretly would love to do that, right?
Yeah.
But that's not our reality,
No, it's not the reality. Actually, I speak with a shaman, Alexander, and he has the same reaction. I mean, I must to pay the bills. I must to speak with you. I have this computer, so it costs money. So of course,
Yeah.
some change maybe must to be
Yeah.
made in some way.
Yeah. And I think in the past it was different. I mean, many, hundreds of years ago, the shaman certainly performed healing, quote unquote, for free, but the community really had a vested interest in making sure that that person was taken care of. So the shaman would perform their healing, and the community would make sure that they were fed, that they were clothed, that they had a place to live, so that the shaman didn't have to worry or concern themselves with, just maintaining their physical being. But we don't have that culture here.
No. So now, Tanya, I like to shift a little bit to systemic patterns from that type of perspective. And I like to ask you how important is structure in creating abundance?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important. And actually, structure, when it's created in the right way, can be generative. It can be supportive and nourishing. And so if you don't have structure, let's say you're building a business and you have no structure and you're just all over the place, then you can't actually hold money. So it's almost like creativity is this energy, right, that we all have. And if you don't have the riverbanks for that creative energy, it can go all over the place, or it can even turn in on itself. And so when you have riverbanks set, then there's a flow can happen. And it's the same thing with money. And in the most sort of basic way, it's like, for example, a friend of mine who's in marketing, she does Facebook ads, and she created a campaign for a man who had a product that he had created, and they were ready to launch the ad campaign. And she said, okay, you're ready for this, right? He's, oh, yeah, I have all the supplies. I have everything I need to fulfill all the orders. She said, great, okay. So they launched the campaign, and it was so successful that he ran out of his product and he had to shut down the ad campaign because eventually he ran out of what was there. So you can see where structure is really important, that you want to be able to be prepared to receive what's coming. And so maybe in the beginning, you're building your idea, you're sharing it with people, you're creating the website, like creating those foundations first, and then knowing what you're offering, how you're offering it, how it's going to be received, and getting really clear on that. And there can be some experimentation involved until you hit the sweet spot. But it's a huge learning curve. It's something I'm still learning. I mean, I don't feel like I am a master of business yet, but it really has to do with a lot of different things, branding, your voice, your product, where you're sharing it, and all of those things. But structure just helps you to, one, not get burned out, because that can be something that can happen, right? I know of a woman
very
who
often.
she's like, I hit my first million and I had to go to the hospital because my body fell apart because I was pushing too hard. So there's so many things that we have to take into consideration when we're building a business. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. And if you do have to take it seriously and really apply yourself and
Study and be in balance, because, like you said, if you make X amount of money but the health is gone, there is a big issue.
yeah.
It's okay to make money, but maybe, I don't know, reflect on that too. Now, I think to ask you about the difference between manifesting money and building financial stability.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's a difference, or at least the way I teach it. So manifesting well, there's so much that is really important to learn. And manifesting, I'm learning a lot. Lately I've been listening to a man named Kevin Trudeau, and he talks about, there's so many books out there on manifesting. You can go out and you can read all the books. The problem with a lot of those books is that they don't have the full recipe. So I'm still learning the full recipe, but what I've learned thus far is, one is your self-image. So if what comes to your mind when you think of someone who's wealthy, maybe there's a picture that you have. Everybody has a different picture that pops up. For me, I'm like, it's, the eccentric, woman with the big hair and the little mini dogs and the big mansion and the, loud and boisterous and a little bit crazy. Like, kind of like that's the first image that comes into my mind. Okay, well, if that's my image of a wealthy person, I don't want to be that. So you have to get clear, like, okay, well, do you know of wealthy people who are, kind, humble, generous? And then you kind of have to go through your images that you have, like, yeah, okay, no, I have somebody. Okay, do you see yourself as that? No, I see myself as this. So you really do have to work on changing your self-image. How you see yourself. Can you imagine yourself? And so you have to work. Images are so powerful, right? Images.
So we speak about visualization,
Yeah.
right?
Visualization and feeling. And you have to be you have to choose every day to put yourself in the best state possible. Happy, energetic, at peace, because if you're worried and stressed out, like, okay, I'm going to manifest money and you're like doing it like that and you're
Stress.
tired and exhausted, like it just doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And so you can say affirmations all day long, but if you're literally not feeling good in your body, it has to be in the body. And so feeling good, do whatever it takes, right? Dance, sing, go for a walk, make sure you're eating good food, looking at yourself in the mirror and telling yourself that you love yourself, whatever. So yeah, the power of, but the key with visualization, it has to be connected to the feeling. So if you're thinking and you're visualizing, but you don't put yourself in that feeling state, then you're really not moving the needle. So one thing I notice that helps me get into that deep feeling state is to play some kind of music. For me, it's like, beautiful piano music. If I'm playing that while I'm doing my visualizations and tuning in with my desires and feeling that I already have it, I can access those deep feelings. So it's the deeper you can go, the better. So
Nice
that's a
you
start.
Yeah, it's very nice you take this topic of power and, of course, identity. But what is harder, receiving or giving?
Depends on who you are, really. For me, it was receiving. Very difficult to receive.
I'm a giver always.
Yeah, I'm a giver too.
Yeah.
I'm an overgiver. I've been a people pleaser, overgiver, give everything away.
Not too much. I don't do that, but I'm a giver because I know it's coming back to me 10, 20 more times. So okay,
yeah,
I
you
give.
do have to. You have to believe that. And so, as long as you're giving from that place, right? If you're giving from a place of just knowing, like, I am so abundant, I'm happy to give this. No problem. The universe is going to give back. But if you're giving from a place of like, oh, I better give because they might not like me, or I need to please them. And if I'm afraid of conflict, so I'll just give them what they, forget it. It's not, you're not in the right state. So there's that. And then of course, receiving is just allowing, like just allowing. And I think one of the best ways to do that is, if someone pays a compliment, if you're someone that struggles with that and someone pays you a compliment, to learn to just say thank you. And that's it. Rather than, yeah, thank you. And you too. I think you're really wonderful and great. Just receive it. Practice that without having to reciprocate can be a great way to sort of begin to receive. But I want to, if you're okay, I'm happy to address the first part of your question, which is, what's the difference between manifestation? And then you said something about money. Because there are definitely certain very practical, not woo-woo, nothing to do with energy ways to build wealth and abundance. And really the first one is start by just saving 10% of your net paycheck or your net income that you make every month. Only 0 to 2% of people, at least in the United States and Canada, are saving. Most people are not. They're not saving anything. They're just spending their money and they're just living paycheck to paycheck. And most people's excuse for not saving is like, well, I don't know, I don't have anything left over at the end of the month after I pay my bills, so I just don't have anything to save, which isn't really true. There's a laziness to that. It's like, well, where can you cut back? Like, you need to start living below your means,
Yeah, of
not
course,
within your means, right?
to have a budget always and to have a look like a profits and loss, in companies, always it's very important. Nowadays, we have many apps we can use to that and to have just checking where the money flows. Because where the money flows, the energy flows.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah, yes, it's true. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us, people aren't tracking where they're spending, how they're spending. And it's because we're conditioned to spend, right? We're bombarded with all kinds of marketing telling you need this, you need that, and so then you don't even realize that you're being programmed to go out and spend. And so you really do have to reclaim your power and control and it's like going to the gym. Saving that 10%, if you've never saved it, can be difficult, right? Like when you go to the gym, the hardest part is just getting in there and start lifting the weights and then to do it every day. And so it really is a discipline, and it's like lifting weights. So just making it a priority. I think if you can frame it of saving 10%, rather than seeing it saving, see it as I'm going to pay myself first before I pay everybody else, my bills and whatever. So if you can start to make it a priority, then you can take that 10%, and then if you apply the rules of money, which there's only 3. One is that there's the compounding effect of money. There's different places where you can put your money, where your money can compound and grow, right? If you're leaving it in the bank or in a regular savings account, I guarantee you're losing money because of the rate of inflation. So learning about different financial products and so forth is important. Then, there's the risk. So there's different places where, you can earn, high compounding interest, but maybe your money's at risk, right? Could be the market. If you're okay with risk, that's fine. But if you're someone that's like, well, I really don't like risk, then finding those products where I want the excuse me, I want the compounding, but I don't want the risk. And then there's ways that our money is taxed. Most people have no idea. They're not versed in taxes. One of the best ways to save money in taxes is to have your own business. It could even be a side hustle, because then you can write off so many of your taxes to the point where you get a tax return, right? And so there's 3 ways that your money gets taxed. There's basically you're taxed when you put something in, you're taxed on the gains on that. That's like the market and mutual funds. Then you have tax deferred. Those are like 401ks or places where you're not taxed putting the money in, but when after, let's say, 20, 30 years, your money grows and you're ready to take that money out, you're going to pay a lot of money in taxes, more than you would have in the beginning. And then there's tax exempt, and those spaces are where you're taxed putting in, but on all the capital gains over time as your money's compounding, you actually don't have to pay taxes on that. And that's what the wealthy do. They use that third option. That's how they keep their wealth.
Yeah, now I like to shift a little bit about the couples, right? Because maybe, and I have many friends, couples, and where it's happening, the woman make more money than a man. So there is some dynamic, it's start to happen something between them. So what happens when a woman earns more than a man?
Well, that money gets spent differently. I think so. Well, if we look at our world, right, men have had the power and the money, and they've been making all of the decisions. And so our world has become imbalanced, right? So the feminine has been suppressed and oppressed. And so now that we're seeing women coming back, because I believe in the beginning of time, we were probably more matriarchal, I think some societies were more matriarchal, and then it's shifted over to the patriarchy. My feeling is that as more women start to make more money, because women naturally think about everybody, right? We are multitasking. We can see the whole. We understand the sort of what's actually important, which is, taking care of our children, taking care of the community, taking care of our elders, being connected to taking care of our environment. And so it's an interesting time because I feel like, I think the masculine is very important. And so there's been this sort of tricky place where, feminism did a lot of great things, but it also did some harm, I think, because women went, found themselves in high positions, becoming CEOs and giving opportunities to be in those high paid positions. But the issue is that women, rather than staying in their feminine, just access their masculine. So there became, that's why we see so many women burning out of corporate America, because corporate America is much more energetically structured for the masculine.
Building, exactly,
Yeah,
make stuff.
right. And we can say that maybe there might be even some toxic masculinity that's going on. And so all of these things need to come back into balance. And so if we can archetypally see that the divine masculine is actually there to support the feminine, so that the feminine can be the feminine is creative just by being, right? But she needs that masculine support. And so we do need both to have a beautiful world. But in terms of like maybe certain couples where, the woman is earning more than the man, I think that's something that is just being explored. I imagine that maybe for some men it makes them uncomfortable, like it makes them feel like they're less of a man if my woman's making more. And maybe for some women, if they're making more than the man, then unconsciously they may feel like, oh, well, this man isn't for me. I need to find somebody else, right? They don't like being in that position. So, I think it can cause breakups in marriages and things like that. So there's a lot more work to be done to really bring that into harmony, and really just redefining for ourselves, what is a healthy masculine, what is a healthy feminine, and how do we define success? So,
Right. Yeah. Again, we speak about balance. Again, we speak about harmony. You see, all the paths and the streets, they going in some way there. So,
yeah.
Tania, if you have a message for the world, what will be?
So my message for the world, and this is what I really believe, is that, we're at a time where we are kind of on this precipice of great change. And it's actually, we get to choose. We get to choose. What do we want? Do we want to continue in this old way that's very non-supportive of life, that's non-sustainable, that feels terrible? Or do we want a world that is supportive of life and is, again, in that balance and harmony? And I believe that the way to that is actually through each other. I think what has happened is we've become so isolated within ourselves, in separation consciousness, in almost an obsessed with self, small self. Me, I need to be successful. I need to be powerful. I need, too self-absorbed. If that the way forward and through awakening is actually what happens when we can open ourselves up to something bigger that wants to be created through and with each other. And when we have those deeper experiences of deep connection, right? And we realize, I'm not just this isolated person having this singular experience. We're having a collective experience. And when we open ourselves to that, so much more is possible. We'll be able to expand our vision in what we can create together. Yeah.
So, if the listeners they will want to come in contact with you, what is the or which is the best channel for you?
Yeah, so newearthconsciousness.com is my website. I post a lot of content on Facebook. My handle there is Tania Mama. You can look me up that way. And then I also have a YouTube channel at New Earth Consciousness where I interview a lot of different, other healers, visionaries, coaches, and where we get to talk about all this stuff. And it's been there, that has been a really amazing experience because it gives me a lot of hope, actually, because there's so many people out there doing amazing work, just like as yourself, Marius, like people who are positive, who are dreamers, who believe in that something else is possible. And so that channel is meant to uplift and inspire and actually give people different solutions to things.
Tanya, thank you very much for your time and for any simple answer what you have. And I hope everyone they take the golden nuggets, like I say always, and maybe they will find some answers.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Marius. And thank you to everyone listening. It was a pleasure.
My name is Marius, and thank you for listening.